My name is Bill, and I'm a Rukoholic. Fellas, I don't know if you're aware of this, but 80 years ago, a guy named Rudolf Koreshka, and by the way, that's where the Ruko name came from, declared war against us. And there's a whole series of battles that you probably should be aware of, because it'll help you get into these locks. If you can look at a lock and determine roughly when it was made, then it can kind of tell you what's inside of it. So let's jump right into this, shall we? Ruko locks can look like pretty much anything that we've run into. It can look like a padlock. It can be round like a mortise cylinder. This happens to be for a mailbox or a gate. Most often when we find these, at least here in the States, they're these oval shaped. They can be made from brass like this one, or they can be brass that's been coated with chrome. It can look like this one. This is actually not a unique or a cutaway lock. This is the inside. When you put the locks together, you put the screw in and kind of binds everything together. But I found these on eBay as well. Now, the letters themselves will help you sometimes determine how old it is. If you look at this one, you see the curve, very smooth transition on the R. It's a little bit different from the modern ones or more modern ones, so that'll help you date it. When you see something this old, it's probably the original Ruko Model 500, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. It can also be a Euro cylinder. Here's a thumb turn, and again, it can be a brass core, and of course it's going to say Ruko right on the front of it. So let's take a look at what we might find here. Now, before we jump into it, you need to know there's different levels of security, and Ruko's gone to some trouble to do that. You'll notice these different color bands on these two padlocks. We have a Ruko 1, which has this yellow band, and then we have a Ruko 2 with a green band. There are a total of 4 colors, and in Denmark they use a standard called the SK4. I don't know what it stands for. It's probably like 200 letters long. But it's 4 categories, and they color-code it for us. The yellow one, in other words, this little yellow striped padlock, would be the lowest possible quality, and that's equal to the Ruko 500, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about because it's the most common lock that we're going to run into, at least Ruko. The next level up in security, by the way, that takes 3 to 5 minutes to pick. The next level of security, we're going to talk about the Model 600 to 1200. I'll show you some examples and I'll tell you what's inside of those. They should take 5 to 7 minutes. If we spend about $100, we can jump up to a blue color-coded lock. I have one here. I'll show you what it looks like and I'll show you some cutaways. You're going to pay for that level of security to get 10 minutes delay. It's going to cost you about $100 US, give or take a little bit. The highest level of security is going to be very expensive, as you can imagine. It's, again, the DP model. I'll show you some cutaways, what that looks like, and show you what's inside of them. They're going to give you about 10 minutes of delay. So there's your security. Let's begin by talking about the lowest level of security, because the most common lock we find is that Ruko 500. Now, there's several different versions you might run into. This is the oldest version. It is a standard core. There's absolutely nothing in it. There's no sleeve. There's nothing unique about the design. If you run a sharp object, it's very smooth. Nothing to catch up on inside of there. So you're going to have the smoothest possible, you're going to have a limited number of kind of pins in that smooth bore. So let's talk about these pins. I'm not a very good hot gluer, but I hope this helps keep the camera focused. In those older cores, like the one I just showed you, you're going to find standard pins. You're going to find standard pins that are tapered at both ends to give you the idea that you've broken a shear line, but in fact you haven't. This one has cutaways on both ends, and it's designed to simulate exactly what that one does. It's got the cutaway, so you think you're at the shear line, but no, you're not. You're going to find a variety of different kinds of spools, standard spools, and then spools like this one. This is called a barrel spool. So there's actually 3 bearing surfaces. One of them in the middle, and hence the rounded edge looks like a barrel. You will find serrated pins, but only in certain kinds of locks, in certain battles, I should say. And I'll show you what some of those design features are where you will find these kind of pins and what to look for. Some uniquely Ruko locks that you will only find in certain type of cores. And I've always called these the Christmas tree pins because they do kind of look like a Christmas tree, or at least like a mushroom. And then the latest cycle Assa Abloy pins, they look like this. They're very sharp. They only have cutouts on the ends. They come in a variety of different lengths. Very sharp, and again, it's designed to snag up a specific design feature inside of the cores. Alright, so there's the pins you're going to run into. In this one, you're going to find everything up to maybe the serrated pins. The next level of core that you will find is this one. See if we can get this thing to focus. Now, this core will have a sleeve. I've removed this one, but when you look inside of the sleeve, if I can get this aligned a little better, when you shine a light down inside of there, you can see that there's some countermilling. Now it's easier to see because I did break this core off, this sleeve off rather. You can see the countermilling beneath it. So you can imagine that sleeve is designed to catch a very specific design feature of our pins. And that design feature, of course, would be this type of Christmas tree pin. It's going to snag up inside of there, it's going to get hung up on that sleeve, and it's going to almost lock up the core, but we can still get feedback, and we can still pick this one. Ruko didn't like that, so they had another battle with us, and they came up with another kind of core. Come on, baby. This core, you might notice, is a little bit different. They're not round holes, they're elongated. And when Michael from Denmark and I looked at these the first time, we thought, well, that's because these are worn out. They've been used so many years, but that's in fact, when you look at pin number 5, it's not worn out. And that's because this one is designed to snag. It has an undercut beneath here. And if I can get the flashlight angled correctly, you can even see that, the undercut. And why do they do that? Why did they elongate this? Well, by using the same Christmas tree, what did I do with that Christmas tree pin? By using the same Christmas tree pin, now not only, does it get snagged, but it allows the core to rotate just a little bit more to totally seize up that core. So when you have 4 of these Christmas pins and one or more of them is caught up here, you don't know which it is, and none of them are talking. None of them are giving you feedback. So that's a great design feature. The next upgrade, when we started using the Assa Abloy pins, again we see the worn out. Come on, baby. We see it's worn out, but machining those cores costs money. And Assa Abloy wanted to save some money, and so what they did is there's no cutout on the bottom of here. It's only the sleeve that's been machined on the bottom of there to catch that Assa Abloy pin. So this one clearly is designed to catch this new style pin. Well, I've taken one apart to show you what lies beneath it. If we can get our camera to play fair, and you'll see that they're all serrated. So not only is the core been serrated, but that final serration is the sleeve itself. Again, it's designed to grab the sharp edges of this Assa Abloy design pin to seize up the cylinder. Well, this is the lowest level of security, and there's a reason for that, because in the mid-90s, a guy named Barry Wells and a guy named Rup Gongrisp in Denmark figured out that you could bump locks. So it's a very old idea, but they made it very public, and these 500s can all be bumped. It doesn't matter which core, it doesn't matter which pin you have inside of there. If you have a Ruko bump key, you can get in there. By the way, you'll notice the shape on this key. Whenever you see a round-headed key, the bow is round on a Ruko, it is the Model 500. If we start looking at different shaped keys, not round, for example this one, it tells us is not the 500. There's something a little bit different about it. This is another escalation in the battle. It's a standard Ruko core. It's in a Euro cylinder. This is a thumb turn. Look at the key. We have to really fight to get back there to that last pin. But if we look inside of here, you see on the bottom it's like a snake looking out at us. And that's because there's a rod stuck in the bottom of there that aligns perfectly with the hole in the bottom of this key. Why would you do that? Well, if you put something in the bottom of the keyway, it makes it really hard for us to get a pickup inside of there because that rod is in the way, so it makes it really difficult to pick. It's an anti-picking method that they've invented. That damn Ruko. Well, 500 wasn't enough, that rod wasn't enough, so now they came up with something called the Model 600. From the outside, you can't tell, but if you put your pin down inside, your pick down inside of there, you can feel that there are 6 pins, and if you can catch a glance of the key, you'll notice the head of it is not round, so it must be a version 600 or better. In other words, higher quality. On this one, we can have up to 12 cuts. This is an older one, you see only 6 cuts. But on the newer keys, if I can get it to cooperate, is that an awesome looking cut? And that's because this is one of the techniques they use to master key. At first it makes it difficult for someone to take a sight measurement, just to guess on your pinning. You don't know which one of those are valid. And that's because they use this technique to, we can use different keys. So you see different cuts on the pins. They have little wings on them to keep them aligned in the cylinders, in the chambers. And the key can use any combination of the cuts on these pins to get in. So you can have 4 or 5, even 6 different keys that will all open the same lock. Why do they do this? Well, because when you put master wafers inside of a lock, it makes it more susceptible, more easy to pick, or easier to pick. So they got away from that by using this technique. One more escalation from that. We move up to another technique. This is called the Model 640 is the way it's described. Again, from the outside it looks identical. This is just a stamp from an organization. You look at the key, we got 6 pins. This is an older one, so you only see 6 cuts, but on the bottom you see some more cuts. This tells us that there are some side pins on the bottom that we're going to be needing to deal with. On this one there are 5 side pins. If we don't like that one, we continue to escalate. By the way, this is a copy of the ASA Combi, or Twin Combi. Or I don't know who, since it's all the same company, I guess it's not a cop. It's just some cross-pollination. If we want to escalate from that lock to a little bit higher level of security, this is the model DP. Again, from the outside, it looks identical. You can't tell until you look down the side of there and you see some extra stuff. That extra stuff, we have up to 12 cuts on the top. It's for 6 pins. And then there's a laser cut groove on the side to align with some side pins. Now these side pins in themselves are unique. And these are unique to Ruko. Again, this is a cutaway, and what you'll see right away, we got the 6 security pins to deal with, and then there are 2 chambers for what look like 2 pins. When in fact, when you look closely at these pins, you can see that they're actually 4 pins. So they're cut in half. Try to imagine manipulating each of those half pins precisely. They have serrations in them, and there's only one true gate. Try to imagine manipulating those inside of a tight chamber. This is not the highest level of security. This is only the blue. If you want to go to the highest level of security, Ruko makes one of those as well, and it looks like this. It's identical to the DP, except now we have 10 of these pins on the bottom. They all are all serrated. They lock into the sidebar. See if I can get it to cooperate here. We have, this is not from the DP, but it's one similar from an ASA lock. Those are the positive gates, and they're not all the same. You can see they're stepped at different levels. And they align with the gate on the lock. This one is in the dead center. All the rest of those are false gates. If we align the false gate with that slot, it will not open, and it will actually grab that pin and seize up the sidebar. We're not going to be getting into it. Well, fellas, that is the 80-year-long war that Ruko has waged against us, the lockpickers. I hope I've given you a couple of ideas of some things to look for, some ways to get into these, and some of the ways to get around it. Anyway, thanks for your time. Everybody stay safe and stay legal.